And I wanted to start off by sharing with you about Zoom that prior to the pandemic, I have used Zoom for a number of years in my online classes. But because necessity is I'm trying to think of the cliche.
Mother of invention.
Of invention, thank you, Lynn. I have upped my Zoom game as a result, and I will continue doing so. And so that is full disclosure that, we can always improve the things that we do. Prior to the pandemic, none of my students had heard of Zoom. So I always had to show them how to get on, and it was a whole thing. And so that was part of it. But now people seem to know how to use it. And so now we can think about ways to make our lessons that are synchronous more engaging for students. And so that's what the goal of today is. So our specific pointed goals for today is we're going to talk about preparing our students, running the session, some basics, engaging our students, and conducting Zoom office hours. And we also have a bonus page with links about accessibility. We did cover Zoom in our 2 accessibility sessions, and so I'm not going to spend a lot of time there, but there are some really helpful links for everybody to use that are easy and helpful. All right, so let's begin with preparing our students. So even if students have used Zoom in one way or another, it is critical to share the purpose and goal with them so that they understand why you're even having the Zoom sessions, because your Zoom session may be different than my Zoom session, which might be different from someone else's Zoom session. So sharing with them, is this a graded assignment? And if so, if you're making it a requirement, we highly recommend that you make that known and that you record it and give them an alternative option, which we're going to talk about in a little bit here. It's critical to include it in your syllabus. And I like to remind students a few days before that we're going to have a Zoom session. So for example, I'm having 3 Zoom sessions after this one today. I have lots of Zoom with students. And I let them know a few days ago, and then I reminded them yesterday, and then after this meeting, I'm going to remind them again. Just as a friendly reminder. I always like the reminders myself. We're all busy. And then, and I wanted to remind you that that's both for class time and office hours. So if you have a regular office hour and it's once a week, that morning you could just send out a quick message using Pronto or an announcement saying, just a reminder, office hours are today between this time and this time.
And also always include the link in this communication, because it's hard to find those links if they come in only one place.
Right. And for the office hours, which we'll talk about in a little bit, it's nice to have that on the front page, but also in the announcement as well. And, Lynn and I have a regular meeting, and for some reason, I'm the one we just started out this way where I use my Zoom. And so I resend the link every time so Lynn doesn't have to check for it. That's, and I do that with other friends too. Okay, so I wanted to talk to you a little bit about some sample Zoom expectations, which I actually had shared in the online teaching resources, but I updated it for this session. So I wanted to go through that. And then I actually found this wonderful handout, which are Zoom tips for students that you may want to have available for them. So let's look at the Zoom expectations first. And these are my guidelines, so you can help yourself to make a copy and then change it how you would like to if you like this document. So I changed this sentence because this didn't used to be true, but I said you're probably already accustomed to Zoom, but if this is your first time, this is what it is. So we might expect that most of our students know what it is, but just in case there's a few who don't, it's polite to let them know what it is. And then I talk to them about how we're going to use Zoom in our class, and your classes may be different. So I conduct at least 1 Zoom session for each project that I teach, or unit. So you can decide if that's something you want to do. Some teachers may decide to do it more often, maybe once every 2 weeks or once a week. And I like to give an agenda to the students before the session so that they know what it is we're going to be discussing and doing in that class and to get ready for it. And so, but I tell them that generally speaking, this is what we're going to be doing, that I want to go over the writing goals for the project. And when I talk about project, what I mean in layman's terms are essays. I'm an English teacher, so essays are the high stakes projects. And so I want to make sure that they hear me sharing the writing project prompt, even if I've given them a video introduction to it. Students, there's times that I've canceled Zoom meetings and they're like, oh, can we please meet another time? It's very helpful when we hear you talk out the project and they have an opportunity to ask questions about it.
Just real quick too, Janet, I just also want to throw in there that if you are teaching your class synchronously this fall, I know there are many of you that are teaching synchronously and using Zoom, it's still a good idea to give them an expectation sheet like this so that they know what to expect, when they need to be in class, what they need to do in terms of their technology. If you want the, I recommend that you give them options for having the camera on and off, backgrounds, no backgrounds. The rationale for that, of course, is equity, so that students don't feel a pressure to share their environment, things like that. And maybe we'll get more into that later, but I just also wanted to point out that if you are doing synchronous, all of your class meetings are going to be on Zoom. So this will be important to let your students know exactly what to expect each of those times.
And you know, Lynn, I'm really, really happy you brought that up. I don't have those specifics in my document because we don't meet all the time, but I do think that those are important things to consider. I will tell you, I was having a conversation with some friends who are teachers, and my friend has a daughter who is 7 and she does Zoom and she's very bored on it. And she said her daughter has learned how to play tricks. So she turns off her volume and she turns off her video. Like there's just these things that she can do to disengage and do other things instead. So those are things to think about, like if you're going to require those sorts of expectations. I also will share with you probably some of the most interesting participants in my Zoom sessions. I've had one girl, this was before the pandemic, she was going to softball and she was on the bus. And so people were asking her what she was doing, and she was on the Zoom for as long as she could. I saw her putting on her cleats. It was sort of funny, but she was there. She was part of it and she was engaged. And I love that was that sort of flexibility that allowed. I've had other students, several of them, they're at work, and so they take their break during the Zoom session, which has been extremely helpful. You know, they know when it's going to be enough ahead of time, so they're going to do that. I also want to mention too that our deans asked us whether or not our classes are going to be meeting synchronously or asynchronously. And my automatic reaction, and this was just mine, was that all my classes are going to be asynchronous. And so one of the things that I have to think about, and I encourage you to, if you are an asynchronous instructor, is if you're going to have Zoom sessions, when you're going to have those. Because if students are taking a number of synchronous classes, then they may not have that time frame that you're wanting to assign. So my solution to that is that I'm going to be having my Zoom sessions this fall on Fridays, even though that was not necessarily something I normally would do because students don't tend to have classes on Fridays. Lynn shared yesterday that she's going to be doing, or she would have, or has done, she's going to be on sabbatical, so she won't be doing it this fall. Yay.
So sad for me.
But that she does her Zoom sessions in the evening. So they're just, you know, you want to think about those things. But I will tell you, in the past, I want to share this, that I try to figure out the best time for all my students to meet on Zoom. And I did a Google form and I asked and I had all the information out, and it was so different. So people could do the night, they could do the morning, they could only do midday, that I stopped asking those questions because I couldn't make enough students happy. And I tended to choose a time that worked best in my schedule. Then I have it recorded, and you'll see in a minute on my instructions. that if they can't come to the session, what I'm requiring them to do. So anyway, this is my my agenda, and the last one here is really critical, and we're going to be talking about this for much of today's session, about an opportunity to collaborate with one another about the content, because really, to me, that's a main point of having these Zoom sessions. And I love that you're all here, and I'm sure there are some people who enjoy watching the videos, but it's just very different if you don't have an opportunity to ask questions on the spot. So I require that they attend one session per project. If I offer two, then I'm asking for one. That's just my protocol. So how long will it be? This is always very important, and what if I can't attend? So my Zoom sessions tend to be between 30 and 45 minutes, with it being an hour total. I just feel like unless we're doing something super important in terms of, like, I really feel like I need that time, but this is about the time when we all seem to be done with our session. That's just been my anecdotal feeling when I've met with students a number of different times. But if you have something that you're doing that is really important and you want to let them know ahead of time, okay, we really need 90 minutes because we're going to do this, 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 and this, then let students know. And then if they can't stay the whole time, they can't, but at least they can maybe set that up for their schedule. So,
Again, if you're doing synchronous, let me just jump in real quick.
yes.
If you're doing a synchronous class, it might be a good idea here on the how long it will be session to let your students know when you will incorporate breaks, or what the breaks will look like, how you will do attendance, things like that. I feel like Janet is correct. About the limit of attention span in the Zoom meeting is about 45 minutes. And since we have a 10-minute break built into every hour of our sessions, if you are teaching your course synchronously, I recommend that you take that 10 minutes every hour. Every hour that you expect your students to be online, make it 50 minutes. Give them that, or even 50, 45, so that they get that break. They need that break to walk away and to come back. And the feeling that I've seen, what I have seen among professionals, be honest, I haven't done a lot of synchronous classes with students, but it's that they appreciate it and they come back and they're fresh and ready to go again. So
Absolutely.
keep that in mind.
Yes, absolutely. And then in my class, because this is a requirement, this is what I'm telling them they have to turn into Canvas. And I made this longer just when I was preparing for this, because this is going to be different for the fall. So if they're in attendance and do an activity, all they will have to turn in is a copy of the work and the date they attended. I always have them put the date they attended. That's just an easy thing that they can put into a text box. And then that way I can double check against my records, because I see the date that I had the session. If they're in attendance and they don't do an activity, they just include the date they attended. If they're not in attendance and there's an activity, I require them to do the summary, which I noted above, where I ask them to watch the video and write a 150-word summary. The reason why I do that is that we learn when we're writing things down, but it also it's a requirement for students to actually go back and watch the video. And it's a carrot, it's an incentive for those to attend who can. There are students who are shy and sometimes don't want to attend, but once they start attending, they feel better about it. We're always nervous with the first Zoom session. I know I was when I first attended one. And so sometimes students have to be given a little nudge. And if the nudge is not writing that summary, then that's great. So I have that summary built in for a reason. And also there are certain things that I share in the Zoom sessions that I don't necessarily share anywhere else. And it's not necessarily a purposeful thing. It's just as we're going through the content and there's things that are brought up in my memory, I share it during the session. And so they need to pay attention and know that it is there. So I require them, if they're not in attendance and there's an activity, that they will need to complete the summary and the activities. So there's space in that activity for all students. And then I share with them if they've never been on Zoom before what to do. And then I give them a little carrot here too. I'm one of those teachers that does have extra credit. So if they attend the first meeting, they earn a little bit of extra credit. And then this is the helpful hints. I think, you know, I had a few of these, Lynn had mentioned them. We could probably very much easily add to these, and I probably will be adding to them. And what I will be adding is are those things about the background. I'm fine with the background. I'd prefer people to run their video if they can. That's my preference. I do have on here that make sure Google Chrome is the preferred browser. Turn on the volume so you can hear. Sometimes that's a problem. If you're not speaking, keep your microphone on mute. And I do a quick reminder at the beginning anyway, where I'm like, okay, welcome everyone. We're gonna get started now, because I start a little bit early, just like we did today. And then I'll let students know, okay, I'm gonna start the meeting now, and I'll say welcome. And if you can please turn this on mute, that'd be great. And then if you have a question, place it in the chat, and we're gonna be talking about that as well. This tips for students is the other item that I have linked in the Google form, and I'm gonna move to that now. I found this and I thought this was useful. Some students, you know, are a little nervous and would like a little bit more information. So this was made by UNC, and it can be adapted. I adapted mine a little bit, but I want to go back and adapt it more. So this unc.edu, I'm going to take that out. But even if you make a copy of this and use it for yourself, you can adapt it for you and your students. So what should I do? Set your name. What should I do? What does it look like? What does it look like if I don't share my video? How should I dress? I mean, it's just little questions that Lynn had asked about before that are helpful. And one of the questions is, can I share the recording with others or upload it somewhere else? And good question, no. This is for privacy. This is for our class. So those are just some helpful reminders for students. And in your first Zoom meeting, it would probably be useful to highlight a few of these, or you can create a quick little micro lecture video and share some of these for students to see as well. Anything else you would like to add, Lynn?
We have at least 3 instructors in the chat who will be teaching synchronously online this fall. So these are good tips for getting them ready to get their students acclimated to being in the Zoom meeting.
Right. One of the things that I wanted to point out here too, that I'm glad you said that, is set your name, add your pronoun or pronunciation if you want. So this person's name looks like, to me, like Kale, right? But it's Kaylee. And so, you know, that's one of the things that you can note. You know, if you have a specific pronunciation of your name that people tend to mess up, you may want to put it in there so that people can see it. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to go back here. So I have a few suggestions here. We're running into the basics here. And I have to tell you, this link right here, which I'm going to go in and open, this is a beautiful link. If you want to take a little picture with your phone, just to have it so that you remember this link, using Zoom to teach your online class. Columbia University did an excellent job of giving very specific examples for a number of different disciplines. And so I'm going to go to this in just a little bit, but this is probably the best link that I have in this session. Okay, so running a session, here are the basics. So again, we talked about this. For the very first Zoom session, you should take a little bit of time to talk about the expectations and how your Zoom session will work, because your Zoom session is going to be different than everybody else's. We're all different teachers, and so like everybody's class is different, so is the Zoom session. And then beyond the lecture, if you are going to have low stakes activities or activities in your session, that are going to have them use other sorts of tools. Begin with easy ones and ones that are not going to cost a lot of points for students if they don't do it quite correctly. It gives students a chance to become comfortable. Please record the session for students who may not be able to attend. And then this one right here is a really important one, and I have done this actually since the pandemic with my classes where I've had Zoom. Is Lynn is here helping me with the chat, and when she does her sessions, it's vice versa. But I've had students who have taken this role for me, and you can add a little extra credit if you want, or you can just ask somebody if they'd like to help. There are students who really like, who do like to help, and I've had really good luck with those students. And if there's a student who's willing to do it regularly, I send them a little, a little message and let them know what I'm asking them to do, and to feel comfortable with interrupting me, like Lynn interrupts me if there's questions. That way, if there's so many students in the class that you need to have the questions go into the chat, you can. If I have a smaller Zoom session where there's maybe just 6 to 8 of us, I ask students to just please speak up and please interrupt me with questions as they come. Lynn, did you want to add something to that?
Mm-mm.
Okay. All right, I'm going to come back up to this link in a minute. But I also wanted to share to make sure you copy and paste document links students may need in the chat a few different times. And Lynn, in a couple of minutes, I'm going to have you copy and paste a couple of other links, and I'll tell you which ones they are. This is important to understand that if you have, when I first started, I copied and pasted the links like right at the very beginning, and I was the only one on there thinking, all right, I got it in. But one of the things about Zoom is that you cannot see what has gone on in the chat before you've entered. And so it's important to copy and paste the links as you can, so as students join. If you can share your screen, it's always a good idea to share your screen, as you share content. Have links open already if you can, so you don't waste time. And that's one of the reasons why I'm not having Lynn do my my slideshow today, because I had my links open. And every time you open up a link, it just takes a little bit more time. It's okay, it's fine. It just is, there's a lag. And then again, Lynn had mentioned this as well. If you're meeting for longer than an hour, give a break with a clear return time. So as opposed to saying, please, we're going to take a 10-minute break, come back in 10 minutes, you can say, for example, it's 11:23. We're going to have an approximate 10-minute break. Let's reconvene at 11:35. So, make it an actual, on a 0 or a 5 note. So if you're giving them a couple of extra minutes, that's fine. That way students know exactly when to come back. And I recommend to them, you may want to just set an alarm on your phone so you know when to be back. All right, so I'm going to go over to this link, using Zoom to teach your online classes. This is from Columbia, and it is fantastic. And some of this material I've moved over, but I wanted to show you, we're going to talk about active learning in a second, that they have links to all of the different tutorials. I have links to some of them, but with their active learning strategies. So I'm going to show you some of these in a minute, such as a Think, Pair, Share. It tells you what to do. It gives you the tools used, how much time it's going to take you to prepare, how much time it's going to take students to work through, and then how to implement, and then alternative active learning strategies. And so they have this for every single one of these. I'm going to jump back here again, but it has all sorts of links that you can follow to give you helpful hints with the active learning. So I want to actually introduce what active learning is and why it's important. And this is from Columbia University, that active learning includes doing and thinking about why they're doing it. So if you're having students do something, they need to be doing and thinking about why they're doing it. And so there's 3 things to think about in active learning. about the encounter, how to engage with the ideas, and an opportunity to reflect. So we're gonna stop just for a minute, because I'm gonna do a poll here that I have for all of you. I'm gonna launch this poll that I would like you to take an opportunity to respond to. It says, in the fall, I plan to use Zoom, never for office hours, for synchronous class time in office hours, once a week in office hours, once per unit in office hours. All right. So the majority of people, 53%, shared that they were going to use Zoom for synchronous class time and office hours, 50%. No one is, everyone who's here is going to use it, which is great. I figured that, but there's a couple of people who are only going to use it for office hours. And then there's besides the 50% who are using it for synchronous class time and office hours, we have the rest being divided between once per week and once per unit.
Do you have, can you share those results with the group? Is it in a pie group, or what does it look like? I don't know how to do that. Does anybody know how to do that?
Let's see. I am going to.
No, nobody?
Yeah,
I use a poll all the time in Zoom, but I've never shared it with the group, and now I want to see what it looks like.
Well, and I just took a picture of it. There's 16 of 18, so I'm going to end it here, and I'm going to actually see if, oh, share the results. Yes, once I ended it, I could share the results.
There it is.
There we go. All right, so that's good to know. That I've used different polling. I tend to use the Google Forms, but this is useful. So you can have students participate in a poll, you can end the poll, and then you can share the results with everyone. And a lot of times I'll tell students, I actually say, please, if you have a second device, I'm very big on this. If you're able to join the meeting on a laptop, that is best with Zoom. But also please have your phone handy, because a lot of times, and I've done this in all my face-to-face and online classes, is I will ask students, you may want to take a picture of this so that you have access to it later on, so that they don't have to go hunting for it in the video. So if this particular poll, the question was really important, and students might actually do something with the poll results, such as write something, reflect on something. I could ask a question, okay, so, this is how we're using Zoom. Why is it that there's a couple of people that are using it for office hours only? Why might that be? And I could even ask if people are willing to share, why are you planning on only using it for office hours? And so those are questions that we could ask and unpack the results of the poll. So saying, hey, why don't you take a quick picture of the results? That way you have it. That's helpful, because when the professor stops sharing, then the students don't have the information anymore. And they may need it for something that they're doing later on. Okay. And there's an option too, you can relaunch the poll. So let's say you launch the poll and something happens, you can go back and relaunch it. All right, I'm gonna go back to sharing my screen. And I actually started with our poll, using polls, and there's actually a nice article about 3 different ways to use polls in your meetings, where you can think about how you might use it at the beginning, middle, and end. And there's a lot of different ways that you can use polling to determine what it is you want to do. Now, I could have had a sort of create your own journey, and I could have done this poll at the very beginning. And if I found out that people were only going to be using it for office hours, maybe the majority of people were only using it for office hours, I might have skipped at the beginning of these slides and went directly to the office hours and spent time just on that. So that's a way to think about using it. All right, so You can also have breakout sessions, and there are a few ideas here for breakout sessions, but they're certainly not the only ways that you can use the breakout sessions. One is using a Think, Pair, Share, and it's in this Zoom engagement strategies handout, but I have an example of one here where we're looking at a chapter of a novel. And what I'm doing, I give a little introduction here. I would read this aloud. And what I would say is, okay, I have a little 3-minute paper prompt where we're going to take a moment to write some responses. And I will have a timer here on my phone. And so the questions are, who is Irene most angry at in regards to the alleged affair, Brian, Claire, or herself? Find a quotation to support your response and discuss why. So this is an actual Think, Pair, Share that I used in my class in the spring. And so I would give students, I would say, okay, so what I would like you to do is on a separate sheet of paper or in another tab in your computer, could you please start putting your answer together? And so I'd say, I'll let you know. And we'll be quiet while students are writing. And even though it says it's a 3-minute paper, I probably would give them maybe 4 to 5 because it'll take a moment for them to get started. And then what I would do is I would use breakout rooms where students then are going to be paired. And what I'm going to do is try to do it mostly pairs, but there may be a trio or two where students read their papers to their partners. If they have the same point of view, find more quotations together to support your unifying point of view. If you have different points of view, discuss why, and then be prepared to share a brief response with another group. So
something also to add to this, if you are doing this kind of activity in your Zoom class, it's if you're going to put the students into breakout rooms, they will it's a good idea to put the instructions in the chat.
yes.
So that they can see the instructions, because the instructions won't be on the screen once they go into the
chat.
Breakout rooms.
Yes, yes, thank you. And so they have an opportunity here for a meeting with 1 or 2 people. And then I'm going to bring them back together and I'm going to do a small group share. So I'm actually peeling the onion back more. So they've had an opportunity, they have the prompt, they've worked on the prompt, they've done a pair share, and then we're going to do a small group share where I ask the small group to choose one person or volunteer to facilitate the discussion, choose another person to take notes, and then each person should take a minute to share the highlights of their pair share discussion and field 1 question by the group. And then if there's time, the note taker will briefly share the notes with the whole group. And what's great about this is that it doesn't matter what the content is at all. You can do this with other content, and I would recommend that if you're going to do this sort of think, pair, share, and then add the group share element, I would do this not just one time ever. This is something that you would go back and you would do again so that students can continue to add to the material in their discussion. All right, so this is an option for the think, pair, share, small group share. Any questions about this?
None in the chat.
All right.
But if you do, raise your hand and we'll unmute you and you can ask.
All right, so I have a little tutorial here about using the annotation whiteboards, and I will share with you that that was new to me, but it's actually very easy to use. And if anyone has used the annotation or whiteboards, please feel free to chime in about what you used them for. I'm going to stop sharing here. And the way I will share with you that the way you get to the annotation screen is you go back to the share screen, and there's a place for the whiteboard, a choice for the whiteboard. So I'm going to click on the whiteboard. I'm going to click on share. And now we have the whiteboard where I am able to choose text, and I can make notes here. I can draw, I can spotlight, I can erase, format, you know, I could draw something and then type something inside if I would like. And so what's great about this is you can just, it's like you're having the whiteboard at school. You just need to practice using the different sorts of tools here. And you can decide that you're going to save it, which I like. That's a wonderful thing, that you can save it and then you can send it out in an announcement with the video so that students can see the notes. But again, even if you do save it, I always tell students it's always a good idea to take a picture of what it is we've created here in our whiteboard. Any other issues or questions about using the whiteboard or experiences in using the whiteboard?
I'm putting tutorials links in the chat for these things.
And the tutorial is linked directly to the handout.
Yeah, it's in your presentation.
Yes, and I follow
Just a question. I do have a question about that.
Yes.
So, like, you have to write on it with the mouse, correct?
Well, you can use text. And
yeah. But let's say I'm a math teacher, or I'm trying to make a diagram. I have to use my mouse, so I have to have pretty good control over that in order to.
Right.
So is there, that you know of, and we can investigate this a little bit for those of you who do want to do this, is there a way that you can do it with a device that is not your mouse?
Like one of the,
or like if you use an iPad or something like that that has a stylus, might be easier. I'm just not sure because I haven't done this.
Right.
That's like I said, I'll look into it and see if I can find something.
Right. The stylus would be helpful. Somebody speaking? Oh, did somebody?
Couldn't you use a different app and share the screen? Yeah,
yes.
like if you have an app that you can write on.
Yeah, is
you mean on your computer?
Yeah, there's actually one, I use a Microsoft Surface, and there is an app that's compatible with the Surface that is awesome. It's a whiteboard app that you can write with your stylus right on the screen. So that's actually what I was going to use, because I don't think I have enough control over the mouse, or I think it would just take me way too long to type. It would just be so much easier to just write.
Right. I agree.
Do you have that, Janae? Can you send it to us so that we can send it out with the announcement next week?
But you have to have a Surface. It wouldn't work without a Surface.
Yeah, I think so. Or yeah, probably not.
Some sort of tablet.
Yeah.
It has to have a tablet, a touchscreen.
Did anyone else have any other ideas about this? Okay.
Well, hold the paper up to the screen.
Yeah, well, you know, that was actually one, somebody was talking about, I think it was Mike Wesh was talking about if you had a camera on a document camera, but see, that means that you have to actually have the document camera. So I don't know that our school has enough document cameras for us all to take home and kind of hook up with our computers, but that would be great. A document camera would be great. But I will tell you, I have moved farther and farther away from using something that I have to physically write on. And so I try to create like I showed you, the template. And then if I do some writing, it's minimal. It's more for the students. But this is still useful. And it's nice, I guess, because if you, like, even if, you know, if you wanted to put a circle here and then write something in the circle and then add something, you know, to it to do some sort of brainstorming type of thing, that would be useful. All right. I'm not going to save that. All right, here we go. So the other thing, and Lynn, this is where I'm going to ask you to please help. For
Okay.
the Google Doc, can you please go to our Google Doc, our Zoom doc, and put that link in, and this is where my mouse is, and put that link in our chat?
You mean the slides? Go to the slides?
Yes.
Okay, go to the slides and do what?
And go to, sorry, I should have had this to you before. Go to slide number 8, and it says
Okay.
our Zoom doc. I have an example here. While Lynn is doing that, I have an example that I'll show you why you want to have your links open, because it just takes time. So I have a sample Google Doc where I have students actually type into it while we're having our synchronous class. And we used it again with passing, just a different chapter. So I used something different for chapter 9 than I did for chapter 12. And for this, I allow edit and edit. So let me tell you, anytime I have a Google Doc where I'm allowing somebody to edit it, I call it template and whatever else it is called for me to keep my own template so I don't have to do anything to it again. Then I make a copy of my document and I will call it, for example, Summer 2020, English 103, okay? And then students can go in and they can actually type in. This was a 102, but I have a place for them to type in.
So this is a collaborative Google Doc.
This is
I've put the link in the chat. You want people to go ahead and do this right now?
Yes. So if you can go and open up this one right here, this is a collaborative one. And what I would like you to do right now, I'm going to give you a few minutes. We're going to have some quiet time here. And I would like you to please answer here, what is one problem of meeting your students on Zoom that you solved and how did you solve it? And then also one creative activity or discussion topic that you've used on Zoom. So I am going to give you a few minutes here to type in. Give you till about 11:47. While people are writing, I'm going to move it back to this. All right, take maybe one more moment. All right, everybody. And I'm gonna ask a couple of questions here. Now, for the sake of time, I'm not gonna have us do the breakout rooms about this, but what I would do here at this point is I would I would say, okay, now we're gonna go into breakout rooms and I'd like you to share a couple of the responses here that you find to be the most useful and why. And so if we had time, I would do that. But I do have a question and I have a response too. So one person wrote, I've used polls to debate the answer to a math question. Will be nicer if polls embed an image. I don't know if poll everywhere embeds an image. If somebody knows, that would be great. But you can use a Google form and embed an image there, and they fill out the Google form, and it can be just a single question with a visual there, and you can see the responses right away. So that is one workaround, although it does take you away from the actual Zoom. Someone else wrote about badges. And so can you tell me, I'd like to ask if that's okay. Where did I find that?
That was me.
That was you.
Yeah.
Can you share about that?
What I did was I just Googled images for badges and I put them in a document. And then when we were having a discussion, I, you know, would showcase student successes by saying, you know, this week on our discussion boards, we had this great post by Molly. And Molly deserves this award. And then I would share the screen of the award, and then I would send that image, you know, would be customized, and then I would send that image off to the person. Or I have done it also where I create a badge document, and I just put all the badges and who has earned those badges in that week.
Fantastic. I love that. I also want to share that, and we're going to talk about this just for a moment, about the use of Pronto with Zoom. One of the ideas that we talked about most recently is that instead of breakout sessions, you can ask students to go and meet on Pronto and videotape their interaction and upload that interaction as part of their assignment. And it can be live streaming of just 2 to 3 people or 4 to 5 people, whoever is there in their groups. The groups can be created ahead of time so that you as a teacher can see what the students have talked about, and it could be something saved to uploaded to a discussion forum so that other students can see what people discussed about a particular issue. And what reminded me about that, I actually have it in our slides, but somebody wrote, Zoom crashes on them, just ask them to log out and re-log in. You can actually ask a student to do that. So if you're having somebody who's minding the chat for you, like I would say, hey Lynn, it looks like we lost somebody, or hey Lynn, can you please just mention in Pronto to log out and Zoom back in, or maybe I can do it while people are doing something. So I really actually appreciate these. This is great. So this is a list you can easily come back to. Okay. So
I have a question about the in the chat. Julie is saying she has not done it. Was that a question? Was that a question? I'm sorry. I'm just trying to see if this is a question you have, Julie. I've not done it.
I guess I haven't done any of these things because all of my classes are asynchronistic.
Okay.
And so I'm really, so I had, that just didn't make sense for me to do. But my question also is about conferences, like how I'm not sure if this is part of it, if you do Zoom conferences one-on-one versus
Yes,
office
we're going
hours.
to talk about that. Yes, and just
Okay.
yes, for sure. I promise. We're
Okay.
getting
So
Yeah, I have a 2:00 Zoom with my, at noon, I have a
yes.
Zoom.
I'm
meeting.
going to talk about it in just one second. Okay, so the other thing that I put, and Lynn had showcased this before, and we're going to move fast past it, but this idea of Answer Garden, I actually put a link in the chat while you guys were working that you can have people go in and link on it, and you can use it as a discussion. It's a different way of polling. I also have used Kahoot quizzes, and we can talk about that further another time, but if you've used Kahoot in your face-to-face class, you can do Kahoot during Zoom, which I've done a lot, but it does require students to have a second device. And so a lot of times I'll do it for fun and have extra credit for the top 2 or 3 people who are doing that. But that Kahoot is something you can actually use in your online classes as well, your Zoom sessions. We've done it in Zoom because you can ask a question, students answer it, and then you can lecture about the response. So Kahoot is not just for quizzing, it's actually a wonderful way to lecture. All right, so I want to make sure I'm getting to the office hours, but I'm going to take one moment here to talk about how I have a little sample Zoom agenda that you could use. This is just one, but these are the types of things that you could do in a Zoom where it's not just a lecture, which includes all of the things that we've discussed here. And then the questions that, in terms of asking about engaging your students, the questions to ask yourself is, what skills should my students be able to perform at the end of the session? Which active strategy will allow students to practice? When will my students encounter and engage with the information and ideas? And so that's really important. So trying to build in time for students to encounter and then engage, and then when will they reflect on what they've learned? All right, so if we have time, we'll go back and unpack that a little bit more, but I wanted to talk about office hours so that we have this option for those people who want to use Zoom for that. Okay.
Or conferences, scheduled conferences.
Or conferences, yes. So for office hours or conferences, where it's a one-on-one situation, but you may be meeting with more than one person, I suggest that you create a reusable Zoom link that is kept on your own home page, meaning that you're planning multiple meetings, and it doesn't mean you have to attend all of them or you have to get rid of them. It's just so that you have the links so that students know where to go to get into your office hours. For this type of meeting or conference, you're going to want to enable a waiting room so students cannot come in without you clicking them in, allowing them to come in. With a bigger meeting, I don't recommend waiting rooms unless there's a reason why you want them, but for the one-on-one conferencing, you're gonna want that waiting room. Now, another thing that I do, and this is really helpful, is that sometimes students see you on Zoom and they think you have unlimited time, but you really don't. So if you're wanting to keep conferences to a minimum, I let students know that, okay, so in order to leave time for everybody, there's going to be a time limit, whatever time limit you want to incorporate, and you let students know so that they do know. And I use my phone as a timer. That way students, when the timer goes off, I'll say, oh, that's the end of our time. And maybe I'll give them maybe like a 1 or 2 minute, leeway. Like, okay, we have 1 more minute. It's time for me to meet with the next student. This is really critical, this watching the clock, because I know you don't want to feel rude with your students, but at the same time, you want to make sure that you're paying attention closely to your time and that of other students. And you can even say, you can even have, and I don't have this here, but you could have a sign-up sheet that you create, an editable, collaborative Google Doc, where students can sign up for a spot, and then you can meet with them that way as well.
You can also schedule it through Confer Zoom on Canvas, and I've just linked the tutorial for how to do that. That's preferable for students because then they can just log in directly through Canvas, and you can see all of your students, and you just go through the list. You click on them one at a time.
One at a time. Yeah.
And it'll just take you directly to Zoom.
Right. All right. And so then I told you before that I have a last page here on accessibility. So these are links to help you with that, side by side, pinning, enabling for American Sign Language, and enabling a co-host in Spotlight. And then I have a few more places to link here. Zoom, this is a YouTube video, ways to get students engaged. Synchronous online tips for engagement, and 7 Zoom meeting tips. This is a YouTube video. So some extra links to support you as well. All right, so now I'm opening it up for questions, comments, suggestions.
One thing is I want to talk about is when you're sharing media in Zoom. When you're sharing media in Zoom, to optimize that media, especially if it's video, you have to click 2 boxes at the bottom of your screen share screen. Before, when you click the button that says share screen, there are 2 very, very small boxes in the bottom right. I don't know which way is right that you're seeing, that say share computer audio, and one that says maximize the video. When you click share the computer audio, it allows the sound to be picked up from the computer instead of from your external microphone or your camera. So that's really super important if you're showing video. And then the other thing is, if you click the button that says maximize video, that means that it will take down, because when you share video in Zoom, it's choppy. It has a little tiny bit of a lag, and you can minimize that. I don't think you can avoid it altogether, but you can minimize that by clicking that maximize video. And what that does is it'll turn off all the cameras, and it won't allow the like we're seeing each other right now in the cameras. It'll turn those off, and then it'll maximize the video that's being shown. And then once you stop the screen share, it'll come back. So that's important if you're going to be sharing media.
Anybody
Okay,
else?
so some questions in the chat. Let's see. Do you use Zoom appointment scheduling? You can use Confer Zoom. It's a tab directly in your Canvas page where you can schedule your student office hours or conferences, and there is a tutorial linked in the chat. See the tutorial to do Zoom office hours. Is that done through Canvas? Yes. Hi, Julie. I think she's gone. Can I use Cerritos Zoom account to meet with former philosophy students who have transferred out?
Yeah, as long
I
as you
believe
have a link.
so.
Yeah,
You know,
just share the link.
can create a meeting in your Confer Zoom account. You have a personal ID, your personal meeting ID that you can share with anybody and do your meeting. So I'm pretty sure that is
Absolutely.
doable.
Yes.
Yeah, so they don't have to have Canvas in
Yeah,
order to meet with you.
we've had Zoom meetings with people that are not on campus who are vendors, right? And so, yeah, and they've had meetings with us with their accounts as well. And family Zooms, Karen has shared.
Yeah, this is your Zoom, So, but don't record everything and save everything, because that puts a burden on the system. We are given this for free from the state. And if you are recording these sessions for your students, try not to keep recordings for, years, because they do take up a lot of storage on the Confer Zoom cloud. I read that somewhere. I forget where, but it said, definitely record your sessions, but you don't need to be saving them. So I've done Zoom meetings for years with my online students, and so I just deleted the ones from a year ago, 2 years ago. Any other questions? We're at noon. Anybody else have anything else to share? Anybody have some cool ideas that they're gonna do this fall? I'm really excited to see how it's going to go with the synchronous Zoom meetings. I've had so much wonderful success with synchronous meetings this summer that I have sort of done a 180 on how I feel about it for synchronous teaching. I think it can work.
I found that students, like I said, every once in a while I'll have to cancel a Zoom session, and students are sad about that. And because if you are building in these opportunities to collaborate and engage, then students really want to be part of the sessions, and they find them extremely valuable. And what I've also found is, like, for example, that agenda that I gave you, I'm going to share the screen again here. The agenda that I gave you, again, it's something that you can, move things around. But a lot of it is, you're setting your agenda. You're doing some sort of opening activity, just like you would in a face-to-face class. You're introducing some content. You're doing some collaboration. You could do the collaboration in the breakout room or not the breakout room, or you can do the 2 or 3 minute paper, etc., and then share the highlights with the class, and then wrap up and answer questions. And you could also use polls as to me, I see them as an entry ticket and an exit ticket. So you could do a poll as an exit ticket, where you're asking students a particular question about content that you've taught them, and their response is going to tell you whether or not they've learned the content. And you'll see, based on the responses, whether they have. And that way, if you use a Google form where they can respond with a paragraph or a sentence that they can write before they leave, that will help you gauge whether or not they have really understood the content and help tailor it for the next session or announcement or whatnot.